Born Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler on November 9, 1914 in Vienna, she grew up in an affluent Jewish family. Her father, Emil Kiesler, used to take her on long walks and explain how machines worked. At age 5, she took apart and reassembled a music box, impressing her father and revealing her mechanical talent. Though she was an only child, Hedy was often lonely. In interviews later in life, she admitted, "I was never close to my mother. She wanted me to be a pianist. I wanted to build things." Despite this tension, she was enrolled in acting school at age 12 and soon discovered her love for cinema. At 18, Hedy starred in the 1933 film Ecstasy, where she appeared nude in a scene and simulated an orgasm. A global scandal at the time, though artistically significant, the film shadowed her for years. Pope Pius XI condemned it, and her parents were devastated. Soon after, she married Fritz Mandl, one of the richest arms dealers in Austria. The marriage was controlling and emotionally abusive. Fritz forbade her from acting and took her to secret meetings with Nazi officials where she sat silently and listened to military conversations. "I sat at the dinner table with Hitler's people," she once recalled. "I was the silent trophy wife, but I was also taking mental notes." She escaped by disguising herself as a maid, fleeing first to Paris, then London. She later joked, "The most difficult role I ever played was Fritz Mandl's wife." After arriving in Hollywood in 1938, she became a breakout star with Algiers. Mayer promoted her as the most beautiful woman in the world, and her face became iconic. However, Hedy hated being reduced to her looks. "People look at my face and assume there's nothing behind it." She was intelligent and witty, but felt boxed into exotic, decorative roles. On set, she often read scientific journals between takes, confusing her co-stars. She never really fit into the Hollywood party scene. She didn't drink or smoke and often preferred being alone or tinkering with inventions in her trailer. Clark Gable, with whom she starred in Boomtown, once said, "She's like a locked treasure chest. You know there's gold in there, but you can't find the key." During World War II, appalled by the Axis powers and determined to help the U.S., Lamarr teamed up with George Antheil, an avant-garde composer and neighbor in Los Angeles. She had a bold idea. If they could create a way to send secure radio signals, torpedoes couldn't be jammed. Inspired by Antheil's automatic piano rolls, they came up with frequency hopping, a groundbreaking concept. Story: Hedy scribbled blueprints for the invention on a napkin at dinner, and they later filed a patent in 1942. But the Navy dismissed it, telling her to stick to selling war bonds. She once joked bitterly, "They thought I was too pretty to be smart." Ironically, their idea later formed the basis for Wi-Fi, GPS, and Bluetooth. During World War II, Lamarr went on a $7 million war bond tour, where she encouraged Americans to invest in the war effort. In one famous story, she promised a kiss to any man who bought a $25,000 bond. A Texas oilman took the challenge, wrote a check on the spot, and received a kiss on the cheek in front of a roaring crowd. She later said, "If they wouldn't use my brain, I'd at least use my mouth." By the late 1950s, Hedy's star was fading. She was aging in an industry that prized youth and beauty above all else. She turned down scripts she thought were beneath her and made poor financial decisions. In her later years, she was often alone and broke. Hedy had 3 children, 2 with her third husband and 1 adopted during her second marriage. She had a difficult relationship with her adopted son James, who accused her of abandonment. In a 2000 interview, James said, "She didn't want to be a mother, she wanted to be admired." Still, her daughter Denise later claimed Hedy loved them in her own way, and suffered from deep depression. In her later years, Hedy became a recluse in Florida. She communicated only by phone, even with her children. But in the 1990s, her story began to re-emerge, not as a fallen starlet, but as an unsung tech genius. In 1997, she received the Electronic Frontier Foundation Pioneer Award, and in 2014 she was posthumously inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. "My beauty was a curse," she once reflected. "It made people forget I had something inside my head too." Hedy Lamarr spent the final years of her life in relative isolation and privacy. By the 1980s and 1990s, the world had largely forgotten the glamorous star of Samson and Delilah, and hardly anyone knew about the inventor behind the foundations of modern wireless communication. Hedy lived in Castleberry, Florida, secluded in a modest home, battling declining health, fading beauty, and the haunting echoes of a life once filled with bright lights and red carpets. By then, she had undergone several plastic surgeries, trying to preserve her appearance in a society that had long celebrated her for her looks. A cruel irony for a woman who once said, "Any girl can be glamorous. All you have to do is stand still and look stupid." Hedy's health steadily declined in her 70s. She suffered from heart disease and chronic pain. Her only real contact with the outside world came through daily phone calls with her children and a few close friends. She reportedly rarely left her house and refused public appearances. On January 19, 2000, Hedy Lamarr died at the age of 85 due to heart failure. She passed away alone, without the media fanfare or public mourning often reserved for Hollywood legends. Her death received modest coverage in newspapers. But even in death, Hedy had one final wish that symbolized her complexity and roots. Her final wish, a return to Austria. Despite becoming an American citizen and living most of her adult life in the U.S., Hedy Lamarr never forgot her Austrian roots. In her will, she requested that her ashes be scattered in the Vienna woods close to where she grew up. A symbolic return to the place where her journey began, long before Hollywood and war and heartbreak. Her son, Anthony Loder, honored that request. In a small private ceremony in Austria, her ashes were scattered beneath the trees of the forest she loved as a child. The nation of Austria would later declare October 9th, her patent filing date, as Hedy Lamarr Day, commemorating her contributions to science and technology. Today, we remember Hedy Lamarr not just as a face but a force. A woman who broke free from a controlling marriage, conquered Hollywood, and secretly invented technologies that changed how we communicate. She didn't live to see the full credit for her invention, but her story continues to inspire women in STEM, in film, and in life.